Well, hi again, folks. We're back with another video. This is kind of a follow-up to my silicone mat video that I did previously. And I wanted to build a sluice which I could try it out in. Now, every time I build a new project, I try to do some different things to it. And on this one, I've made some obvious changes here. Now, the lower portion, I was hoping to make it into a miller table when you took the mat out. See how that would try. Now this is a special paint that gold likes to stick to, and I also applied it to the slick plate. Now the idea is to slow the gold down so that it just doesn't go blowing on out the end of the sluice like it does with a lot of other sluices. Well, here's a little bit of a close-up view of it. As you can see, the end of the slick plate is on an angle and curving down towards the mat. Now, as the gold comes slowly moving down the mat due to the paint, it will hit that slick spot on the end and slide right on down into the mat. Now, here's a little closer view of it, and you can see a little more clearly. Now, the gold will just slide right down the end of the slick plate and into that first groove area. Here's kind of a quick view of it in operation. As you can see, it's a very thin, very smooth water flow down over the slick plate and over the mat itself. I know that there's a lot of people who don't understand this design and think it's a little crazy. Well, the thing is I work with primarily very tiny gold in the 50 to -100 mesh. And I need very smooth, slow water in order to work with it. And so this is why I've designed this. Now maybe I can give you kind of a little demonstration why I like it. Now I'm going to use a real crappy water bar on this and slow the motion down so that you can kind of get an idea of how this works. So pay kind of close attention at the turbulence here coming out of that. Now this is very typical of a lot of sluices and even a lot of fine gold sluices I see. Now the very tiny gold I work with is just not going to stand a chance on settling down in this kind of turbulence. So what we wanted to do is to try to slow things down. Okay, now pay attention to this. This is going to be in real time. Now watch what happens when the well fills up. Okay, now you've got a full well, and it just minimizes that turbulence right down to almost nothing. And this is kind of why I like this. And with a very good water bar on here, the turbulence is even less and a much smoother flow. Well, let's run a little material and see how it works. Now, normally I screen my material down through -12, 20, 30, and 40 mesh screens, and sometimes even lower than that if I'm looking for real fine gold. So this one has been screened through a 10 mesh screen, so everything from 10 mesh on down is in there, except for the very ultra fines which muddy up the water. And I want it so we can see what's going on here, so let's take a try with some of this. Yeah. Well, that looks like it's slowing the gold down all right. Right down to a complete stop. But if you'll look down towards the bottom, that mat You can see the fine gold is working its way on down, and it is getting caught the way it's supposed to go. But I wasn't exactly planning on this being a Miller table. I guess we're going to have to call it a Miller sluice. Very interesting. Well, what we got is a very crappy water bar and some very minimally screened material, and so we're still getting the gold. Boy, this is crazy. This is another thing I like about this deep well. If you get gold on the deck, then all you have to do is sweep it down into the well for safekeeping. Then you can come along and snuffer it up with your snuffer bottle a little later on. One thing that's kind of interesting to me is just how fine a gold is sticking to this. Some of that is down around 100 mesh, and I'm quite surprised it's staying there even with the higher water to wash off the heavier gravel. Well, this will give you kind of an idea of how that curved nose on the slick plate works. As you can see, the material just slides right down the slick plate and follows right on down that little nose and onto the mat. Now this is where we want the gold to fall, and I like to keep my gold in the upper 3 inches of the mat if I can. Okay, now what do you do with all that doggone yellow stuff that keeps sticking to the slick plate? Kind of messing things up here. Well, I guess we'll just sweep it off into the deep well for the time being. Maybe we can run a little more dirt here. Well, the gravel's coming down the way it should do and hitting the mat, and then spreading out down the mat just the way it's supposed to. And if we looked a little closer, we'd see that the fine gold is falling out right at the top edge of the mat the way it should, and the rest of the gravel is just moving on down. Oh boy. Code blue, clean up on aisle 3. Just, what do you do with this stuff? Geez Louise, getting hard to run any dirt if you got to stop and clean this stuff up all the time. Don't know if this was such a great idea or not. Well, this is kind of how I like my gold to fall now, is right on the first few riffles, and this is kind of a dead spot on riffle 1, 2, and 3, and that's where a lot of your fine gold is going to fall out and get stuck. And also your black sands, as you can see here. One thing I like about these mats is the easy way they clean out. The material just kind of rolls off from it and makes it very easy to clean them out. And there you go. Well, this is a 8 by 12 inch mat, but it has a real low con rate, only 1.5 ounces, which isn't too bad. Well, I can hear folks out there yelling now. Well, what does it do with Cape Disappointment Black Sands? Well, thanks to those wonderful folks up at Washington Beach Mining, I can show you. This is some of the most challenging pay dirt on the market, and if you want to really test your skills, this is the stuff to try. I love to test my equipment with it. Now, this material has been run through, the Sawtooth, the Vortex, several deep V mats, and a Lowe's deep V mat to boot. And so this is a tailings that you would say there's no more gold in there, because there hasn't been any more gold that's been able to be recovered from this with a sluice. Now, you will see some larger pieces in there, and this is what's washing up out of the deep well. We still have the gold stored in there from the previous run, and we've still got that crappy water bar which is washing it up now too. Now, all of the black sand has been classified through a 100 mesh and a 125 mesh screen. So every bit of that small gold, the biggest stuff, is 100 mesh. Now, the thing is this gold is about the same weight as the black sand, and this is what you're going to encounter, and this is why a sluice can't clean it out, because the gold and the black sand is pretty much the same weight, and in a sluice you have to have a difference between the gold and the black sand. Now, not to knock a fine product, but this is one of the problems that you have with, like, the Blue Bowl, because when you start running the black sands out of the bowl, this gold that's the exact same weight is going to go with it. So this is one of the conundrums you come across when you're trying to work with this fine stuff. So that's why it's important for those folks running the Blue Bowl to be sure and catch your material that's washed out and have another way of processing it, like panning it or a miller table. And I think it'd be a good idea for those folks who work with this constantly to have a miller table to help clean up your black sands, because it's one of the few tools that I've found that really works well with them. Well, I'd say that's not too bad for some overworked tailings. Of course, the big stuff was washed up out of the deep well too. Something that will give you kind of an idea of just how small a gold we're working with here. All in all, I'm kind of happy with the way this little sluice has worked out, and I think it's going to work pretty well. And it looks like it's going to recover just about everything that I can put through it. Well, I guess there was just one more thing to try, and that is when you take the mat out, does the bottom work as a miller table? Well, unfortunately, with this design, it didn't work out so well. So I guess not everything works for you. However, if you do have a regular straight sluice and not a miller or a deep well design, this will work like a champ. If you have just a straight aluminum body or a wooden sluice, then you can paint the bottom of it with chalkboard paint, and it'll work just like a miller table. So a good sluice can do you double duty that way. So anyway, this is something that didn't work. Well, all in all, I guess that was a successful run. We ended up getting to test the sluice, the mat, and got a little gold to boot. So I guess all turned out well. Well, all in all, I say I'm pretty happy with the way this little project turned out. The slick plate turned out to be a little more than what I'd initially planned on. But, and the mat worked out especially well. I went through and made 6 runs with this material, dumping the gold back in the material and rerunning it again 6 times and varying the water and getting it up to some pretty fast speeds there. And I panned all the tailings out very carefully, only a tablespoon at a time after each run, and I didn't find a single speck of gold in the tailings. So I'd say that's a pretty good sign that it's working pretty well. I think my next step with this, I'm going to be making a larger version of it to handle a lot more production material, and give that a try this summer and see just how it works. So you might stay tuned, and if it works out pretty well, we'll do a video on it. So as always, I appreciate you stopping by and watching, and I hope you have a good day. Bye now.